So can we dive in here, because time is going to get away from us, and there's so much to talk about when it comes to this game. There are two things in particular I want to get your thoughts on. Southgate's management of this game up until his substitution on the 70th minute when he brought Saka on for Trippier, because there was a sense for a long while that goal was coming, and I'm sure he knew, he could see that, he could feel that, and did nothing. So give us your read on how Southgate handled that situation as the Italians grew into the game and he continued to do nothing, because I'm sure there was a good logic there as well on his part.
Well, my thoughts were from the start. I mean, I try not to be biased in any way for any team. I just want the best football team to win situations like these. And when he puts it aside, it's basically got 8 defenders, 2 attacking midfielders in Mount Sterling and Kane up front. That's at home, at Wembley, and that's 8 defensive players. Now, I've already got my back slightly up about that because this has been such an open tournament. And is this the thing that's going to win it? And then they score in the first minute, and it's 2 of those defenders. One makes it, one scores it, and you're thinking, well, he might be a genius then. But they kind of just didn't push on from there. They have got the players to be much more positive. It may well have been that I would have played a different team. I played in a more attack-minded team, a more attack-minded system, not 2 sitting midfielders because you're at home and you've got a great chance. But then my team probably wouldn't have got to the final. His did got to the final. So I understand why he did what he did. But when they started losing it, and when they started, not being able to get a kick of the ball in that second half, you're thinking, like, you need to be very, very brave now. And he did take off a defender, and they did go to 4 at the back, but it took a long, long time. By that time, momentum was gone.
And it was 1-1. It was 1-1 as well. The Italians had scored.
There was no way he was going to change it when he was 1-0 to England. Not a chance. Yeah. No way. So it was a bit like, it was Mourinho-esque, wasn't it? It was Mourinho-esque. It was, we're going to defend, we're going to do this, we're going to hold up, we're hard to beat, and we're going to be that way. Now, if he walks away with the trophy, which he's 1 kick away from doing, i.e., the corner that they scored for, and also eventually the penalty that they didn't score. So he's very, very close to getting it absolutely right. So it's close. But I would have found it very, very hard to cheer them on, even with the cup in their hands, because that wasn't the tournament. That wasn't the way modern football is going. Modern football is going more positive than that. English football is going more positive than that. And I know why I did it, I understand, and it nearly worked for them.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it was wrong, but I wouldn't have been standing there cheering for their afters, because I watched the Italians, who are historically much more defensive, and they did none of that. The 2 centre backs were up chasing down the wing half the time.
Yeah.
It was a joy to see that. So I don't know many people other than absolute vastly and massively big England fans that said they should have won that game, because they shouldn't have won the game and they shouldn't have won the tournament, and the right team won it.
Even when he made the change and went to 4-3-3 with Saka on, they still couldn't wrestle back control of the game at that stage. It's
gone. The momentum had completely gone. They'd had to get everybody up for it. I mean, it's a big old change you need to make then, and you have to have big personalities in the pitch that are going to change it forward. But I still didn't think it was really positive enough to make that sort of change. When you make the changes like that, you do something absolutely radical and you ask a massive question. And it usually means not still sitting around with 2 sitting midfielders. Italy didn't have 2 sitting midfielders. They had Jorginho and, a bit of help now and again. He'd get in there as well. But even Jorginho, he's not... Verratti will come in there and help him sometimes, but in actual fact, Verratti was spending his whole time... He was all over the place. He was playing everywhere in the game. So in the midst of it all, the team with all the dare, all the devilment, all the kind of keenness to go and win the game at an away ground, it was Italy.
Yeah.
And for a football fan, and if you don't care about Italy or England and you're watching that game, if you're a football lover, you wanted Italy to win. You absolutely did.
Southgate clearly made the decision early on in this tournament that pragmatism would rule the day, and that was the best way to win the tournament. And I suspect he still believes that. It would be interesting to get his innermost thoughts now. But the charge against him is a severe one. It's that you had pretty much the most talented, give or take, squad in the tournament. Very few had the embarrassment of riches off the bench that you had. France might have a thing or two to say about that, but really, and home advantage as well. He had a lot of cards to play here.
And the draw from heaven
Indeed, yes. And right the way through, he was, you could really pitch it as negative as he could possibly be. Like in real terms, he was as negative as he could possibly be. And we sat here through the weeks and said, okay, well, if it's working, it's working. And maybe, you know, that's international football and that's tournament football and fair enough. And ultimately, the foundation which he built his approach on, that pragmatism, undid the team in the end. So now suddenly, like, there's a huge charge against Southgate, given the cards he had to play here and how he just refused to play them. Like the Grealish thing, I don't understand. I just don't understand, for one, and that's one of several.
The Grealish thing's quite interesting because when you bring Grealish on, and a lot of people having a dig at Harry Kane as well, think about it, you've got 30% of the possession, and even that, a very small percentage of that, is in the final third. You're getting completely starved of, you know, quality service and good opportunities in the ball. Grealish comes on and gets very, very few opportunities. When he does go in the ball, he frightens the life of the Italian defence. So, you know, for those of us, and I openly say I'm biased in this situation, and I would like to see more attack-minded football. I loved what I saw from a lot of the teams in the tournament, and the teams without half the kind of individual skills that the England players have got. On the other hand, and you have to be honest about it, this is all very good in hindsight. He could have sneaked it.
Yeah.
He nearly did.
Yeah.
And if he sneaked it, that's 5 decades they've been waiting for that, and he found a way. And he was very, very close to it. But I don't think there'd have been a lot of love out with his own country. Not that he would have cared. Not that English fans would have cared about that. But, you know, football's it's kind of moved on. It's
sorry to interrupt because it's so interesting. Was there a change he could have made to try and wrestle back momentum? Like Mount, you'd be a big fan of Mount, I presume. He jumped out as someone that wasn't affecting the game as much. For instance, like even if it's putting on Henderson to go in there and try and get them playing again, I wouldn't have had objections to it. But he really just did nothing. He really said, we're hanging on here. What change... And park your romanticism for a second. Put yourself in Southgate's mind for a second. What change could he have made early in the second half to try and wrestle back some momentum?
Well, the first thing I would kick off with is if you don't really need 3 centre-backs, full stop. You don't need that.
Okay.
Stones isn't terrible. Maguire's not terrible, right? Or if you want to use Walker as one with his pace because you're worried about pace, fair enough. Do that and accept that you need to lose either Trippier or Shaw and just go on with it and play a 4. Do you honestly need the 2 sitting midfielders the whole time? Do you not trust them? I mean, Phillips is a good player. Rice is a good player. Can you not trust one of them to do that job? And then if you do go a 4-2-3-1, which is a bit... Those two don't have to be... I mean, I'm not saying Rice and Phillips sit all the time. They don't. They go now and again. But they are not anywhere near the creative players that they could be. So they could adapt that completely. There was other things you could do. You could have brought on another centre forward, be it Rashford, and not necessarily put him at right fullback. Bring him on, gives Harry Kane a chance to drop into an area where he is collecting the ball. Well, they really don't want that to happen. To be fair, if you looked at the Italians, they were scared of Harry Kane. They were on him, they were chasing him, were getting close to him. The other thing, can I go back to Mount for a second there? I watch, obviously I'm writing for various people, and one of the people I'm writing for the Chelsea website, so I'm going to keep a close eye on what Mount's doing, you know, and what Jorginho's doing. Mount's been given a job. He's like, go seek and destroy Jorginho. That's what he was told to do. I'm sure of it in that first half. He didn't really take part much in the game. No. He spent his time trying to close down Jorginho, and it kind of worked for about 25 minutes. But the game doesn't last 25 minutes. And eventually gaps will open, spaces will happen. And they began to make use of that. So in the end, I mean, you could argue that he played a 3-4-2-1, which is a system that's been very successful in England. And recently, in fact, Chelsea won the Champions League with that system. However, the 2 central midfielders, they can't be as ultra-defensive as that. One of them has to go. I mean, we've watched the French doing that. And they quite often have Pogba and Conte. Well, Pogba will get forward from there, won't he?
Yeah.
And even Conte now and again will get forward from there. Whereas Rice and Phillips, they're very rarely going to score your goal. Create your goal.
Because goodness me, the attitude for their first goal, you had obviously one wing back cross into the other, but you'd Kyle Walker, one of the centre backs, initially underlapping and then overlapping Trippier and taking Emerson away and giving him space to cross the ball. And you thought, my God, it's devastating. If you're going to allow Kyle Walker get forward, then all bets are off. But obviously, that was almost just, I don't know, the exuberance of the opening moments.
That's a really good point. And there was a period right at the start there you thought about it and you think, wait a minute, they're overloading that right-hand side all the time. And they've got such pace there. And the Italians at the moment don't have an answer for it.
Yeah.
And it's hard to tell where it was Mancini said, right, okay, we need to cover that area, or else we'll ask somebody to cheat behind Walker so that when the ball goes in there, he will be in danger of not being able to get back in time. There's a lot of things going on in the game. And to be honest, I'm like everyone else. This time I was watching it on TV, and you're at a disadvantage there because you're trying to read. And it's really much better to be at the game at some height so that you can see those sort of things. Because there's a lot of things going on. Another thing I'd be intrigued to know was it Gareth who says, no, get back, stay, sit? I have a suspicion it was, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Or was it the players who, as is natural with most players, we're a goal up, let's hold on to this. We're defenders, we know how to defend. We'll just, revert to type, as it were. And it may well have been that. And it's the oldest one in the book, that. We've all seen teams that had a great first half or whatever, and then, we're one up and we just stop playing that way, or we don't push on. Because England get another goal, and there's no way back from Italy. No way back whatsoever. And I think everyone would have agreed with that. So, if they would have been beaten, with that, cavalier, not totally cavalier, but a bit more cavalier attitude, to be more impressed. But having said that, Gareth Southgate, in his own words, have said was that the last tournaments they've had a fourth, a third, and a second, and it's kind of all right, considering everything. They've actually done quite well to get there, but the chances don't keep on coming, I don't think.
No, and they may. I mean, progress isn't linear. They may well look back on this as their big chance, and for various reasons, various stars aligned.
But oddly enough, I don't think they will. I think they will have more chances. Just looking at what else there is in the world just now, I think maybe the Belgians will be just about going past their best. Watch the Argentina-Brazil game, and I'm thinking, yeah, it's all right, but, it's not unbeatable. So you start looking around the world and thinking, actually, there's probably half a generation left there, and they are pretty young. So
yeah, well, it's the youngest England squad in decades, actually, and that will obviously be okay in 16 months' time in Qatar. So from their goal, their glorious opening goal, they don't have a shot on target for the next 130 minutes of football. Harry Kane, for just the second time in his 61 caps, doesn't have a single shot across his evening. So we go to penalties. Obviously, the big discussion is the substitutions, are the substitutions of Sancho and Rashford. Clearly, he wanted to get them on a couple of minutes earlier. His logic, and he made the point today in the press conference, is that if I get them on too early, I'm left with just 4 defensive players. So he would have been left with, on the pitch, just Stones, Maguire, Phillips and Shaw. And we saw Rashford go to right back. So he was saying, look, I don't want to do 8 minutes of that either. But for the 2 players, very, very difficult, I would presume, Pat, to take a penalty cold. That and not just any penalty, by the way, the most important penalty of your life cold.
Yeah, that jumped out at me as well. I mean, if you're a player coming on, you want to get involved in the game. You want to get, and it's, you're perfectly capable of walking up and kicking the ball 12 yards. We're all capable of doing that. But being in the moment, being at the pace of the game, feeling the adrenaline at the right levels, you want to have a level of control. But you're almost special teams at that point in time. It's almost NFL stuff. Bring on to kick a ball in a net. And that's kind of not what they do. They're football players. Do you know that moment when he waited and waited and waited, but then they lost a corner, and then there was a near post header? Can you imagine the stick that Gareth Southgate would have got then had they made those changes, and then they lose a goal from a near post corner because they'd taken the defensive players out? So I understand to that end why he left it as late as he could, but it's kind of hard for young players brought on fairly cold to walk up and do that. And I thought it was particularly hard on Saka, really hard on him, because he's very, very young. And if you've been asked, ask everybody who you want to take your 5th penalty, usually if it's Portugal, it'll be Ronaldo. If it's Argentina, it'll be Messi. You start looking around them sort of ones, and you let a kid, real kid do it. And I thought that was tough. That was really tough. I mean, who else they could have asked or not asked? Because you look around and everyone tells you the stories, and the stories are true. The gaffer has to look around at the eyes and says, who fancies it? And he sees a lot of eyes at the ground at that point.
Well, Grealish said yes, and you could see him nod, and he tweeted as much today.
Mm-hmm. And which was a shocker. But then again, I've got an old-fashioned theory of never let wingers take penalty kicks, and that's not just because I was rubbish. But there's a kind of thing that is much, much better, centre forwards, attacking midfielders, that sort of thing. But I mean, having said that, we're all very, very wise after the event,
sure,
as you say. And Rashford's was almost with 6 inches, and it's the perfect penalty, and it's a beautiful thing because he's sending the keeper miles the wrong way. So that sort of thing. But the other two, and particularly tackles, it just was nowhere near enough power and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those classic ones where you often say it in the modern game, where I certainly do. If you don't hit the side netting and the keeper goes the right way, it has been saved. You just accept it's saved. Hit the side netting with power, and you've got a chance of scoring. Anything else other with the keeper going the right way, you've no chance.
Yeah.
Because they're too good, they're too agile, they're too big now. The other thing on top of it is, for all the talk of everything, who do you want in your goal? Pickford or Donnarumma?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
And it's, if standing back from it, looking on, and I'm looking, well, I know who I would want to be supporting just now. I would want to be supporting Italy, because Pickford's not dreadful at penalty kicks, and he makes a good save against Jorginho, which was a real shocker because no one seems to be able to read that one. But in the end, Donnarumma is just gigantic, and of course he's got that personality as well. So I do feel sorry for them. And the sad thing is, we'll all say the right things, and of course it's almost not worth saying, but we will say it. The racism stuff towards those lads who missed it is absolutely disgraceful and disgusting and unacceptable, and the abuse they will get. But sadly, what we played at the start of this, that montage of all those misses, they're all remembered. They don't get forgotten.
It's
the
tough.
only way you forget them is if you score at another major finals and you have redemption. That's the only way.
It's tough to make a mistake at 19 that you'll be remembered for a very, very long time. Pat, we are out of time. Thanks so much.
Absolute pleasure.